hit record and get started. So again, thank you for joining us at our monthly Teach Outside second Thursday of the month workshop series. So these are our 90-minute little interactive educational work webinars that the Nebraska Forest Service and our network of program partners help facilitate each month. A little bit about who we are. So my name is Jack Hilgert, and I am the Conservation Education Coordinator for the Nebraska Forest Service. I also am the state coordinator for Project Learning Tree and Project WET, which are two environmental education curriculum programs we'll learn about a little bit later. And I'll go ahead and let two of our guest speakers today introduce themselves as well. If Allie, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Allie Mays, and I'm the Community Science Education Specialist with Nebraska Game and Parks. And so I do community or citizen science projects all across the state and just help promote that sort of projects and create curriculum for them and that sort of thing. It's a really fun job. And we'll move on to Caitlin.
Yeah, and Caitlin Leary is also joining us today.
Hi guys, so yeah, I'm Caitlin. I'm from Omaha Center Doorley Zoo and Aquarium. I'm also the Conservation Education Coordinator here. And so my job, a lot of it has to do with citizen science, about 50%. And so I get to work at our zoo and aquarium here in Omaha. And then I also get to work at our wildlife safari park in Ashland, which is all North American animal focused out there. And so that's where a lot of my citizen science projects happen with amphibians and water quality and monarch tagging. Those are our three big projects. And then the other half of my job revolves around ocean health. So I get a little bit of both worlds in what I do.
Yeah, and we're so happy to have them both joining us here this afternoon. I also wanted to plug that all three of us are actually board members of this group called NACE, which is the Nebraska Alliance for Conservation and Environmental Education. And we're kind of the professional organization for environmental educators in Nebraska, and we're the state level affiliate of the broader NAAEE, which is the National Association for Environmental Education. I'm sure I'm butchering that acronym, but and so if you're interested in learning more about our work in that organization, you can go to nace.org, but the Nebraska Forest Service, which is our sponsor agency this evening, is a University of Nebraska-Lincoln affiliate through IENR. So we're one of only 5 state-level forestry agencies in the country that's housed out of the university. My office is on East Campus, but my position serves all 93 counties in the great state of Nebraska. And our mission at NFS is to enrich the lives of all Nebraskans by protecting, restoring, and utilizing Nebraska's tree and forest resources. And in my program, Conservation Education, we achieve this mission by connecting Nebraskans, especially youth, such as the youth that you reach through your educational work, with their trees and forests to inspire the next generation of conservation stewards and tree planters in Nebraska. So that's a lot of introductions because we've got lots of partners. I always like to say that in conservation, the most important word is probably partnership. So we all like to work together. We also want to take a little bit of time to do land acknowledgement. So the University of Nebraska, of course, is a land grant university, and we serve the entire state of Nebraska. And so our land acknowledgement is rather lengthy, and I have it up here on the slide. We want at the Nebraska Forest Service to recognize the historical and current indigenous populations that reside on the land that we serve in Nebraska, as well as how we are striving to create better relationships with all communities across the state, especially those indigenous communities that reside in Nebraska. So if you're interested in how the university crafted our land acknowledgement statement, you can go to that first link there to see how the university crafted its land acknowledgement. And if you don't have a land acknowledgement for your organization, or you're interested in potentially developing your own, you can go to that second link from the Bureau of Indian Affairs with some really great resources on how to get started. So now we'll dive into our objectives. Our objectives are twofold during our brief 90 minutes together. First is that you as participants will be exposed to curricula to guide children in outdoor and environmental experiences. And that second, that you as participants will be equipped with the knowledge on how to teach students in all types of weather in Nebraska, right? Here, especially in our great state, we kind of experience sometimes all 4 seasons in a day. So it's always fun to just try and get outside. And so now that we're entering April, hopefully our weather starts to turn around a bit and we start to have a little bit more fair weather, and it's a great time to start integrating some more environmental and outdoor learning into your setting, whether that be in a traditional classroom, a child care center, or somewhere in between. But here's our agenda or roadmap for the next about hour and 15 minutes that we're going to spend together. We're going to talk about what the City Nature Challenge is. It's this national initiative that we have going even here in Nebraska. We're going to go through a little bit of curriculum from Project Learning Tree that connects really well to the City Nature Challenge and have you all try out a lesson from Project Learning Tree. And mention a few other lessons. If those of you who may have attended some of our other PLT and WET workshops before might already have the curriculum, or talk about how you can also receive the full curriculum at another workshop. And then finally, we'll wrap up with a demonstration about how to use iNaturalist, which is a really important tool that is built around, or the City Nature Challenge is built in tandem with that app or that computer program. So I know it feels like we have a lot of ground to cover, but I always like to say that more conversation or more interjection is more than welcome this afternoon. So our workshop is here to serve you all who are attending today. So feel free throughout the workshop if you have a question or if you have a comment or something you'd like to share or that needs more explanation, feel free to interject as much as you want, either by participating in the chat box, like you might have to introduce yourself a little bit earlier, or to unmute yourself and do so via your microphone this afternoon. So I don't want you to feel like that you can't ask us a question because we have more to get to. I'd rather have more time on questions and have us have to make up more time a little bit later with what we have planned. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to Allie Mays from Nebraska Game and Parks with her discussion of the City Nature Challenge.
All right, thanks, Jack. So the City Nature Challenge is an event that is, it's planned on a global level by the California Academy of Sciences and the Natural History Museum. And then in the state, it's planned by a bunch of partners, and we'll get to that later, but the city, at a city level in Nebraska, it's primarily coordinated by the Omaha Zoo, does the Omaha one, and then Game and Parks does the other 4 cities in the state. Next slide. So the City Nature Challenge is a global event focused on finding and documenting urban nature using the app iNaturalist. Really quick in the chat, how many of you are familiar with iNaturalist? You've used it before, you haven't used it at all. What's your comfort level with iNaturalist, just before we go any further? Or you can unmute and just say, okay, we have some that haven't used it at all before, some that have used it a little bit. Okay, great. Well, I'm really excited to introduce you to iNaturalist today because it's one of my favorite apps when I'm out just exploring or exploring nature. Slide. Okay. So with the City Nature Challenge, there's kind of some primary focuses. The first one is to connect people to their local nature in urban and metro areas, to connect people to each other. So building that community, both online and in person, around local nature. collect urban biodiversity data that are available to managers and scientists. So using iNaturalist puts the observations that we make into a database that's accessible by scientists, land managers, even students, researchers, that sort of thing. Another focus is to grow volunteer biodiversity documentation globally. And then there should be one more. Have fun through some friendly competition. Hit it again, Jack.
Oh,
oops. But then also collaboration. So the City Nature Challenge started with Los Angeles and San Francisco, and it started as a competition between the two. They were like, you know what, it'd be super fun if we could go out, get people in both of our cities to go explore urban settings, find as much nature as possible, and I bet we'll find more than you, right? This city will find more than that city. And it continued that way as this competition, even as it continued to grow, 16 cities, 68 cities across the globe. And then we had COVID, right? So with COVID, it shifted from this competition to more of a collaboration, which I really like. So now it's like, how many observations of urban biodiversity can we find worldwide, which is really cool. And you'll see in 2021, so last year, there were over 400 cities that participated across 44 countries, and we broke 1 million observations on iNaturalist. So that was really cool to be a part of that. Next slide. So this slide is just pretty cool because it shows that growth of use of iNaturalist. So the City Nature Challenge is always a huge spike in the use of iNaturalist, but it also continues, right? So we're growing as we go because people use it and then they find out it's really cool and they continue to use it. So this is really important. The City Nature Challenge can be kind of a little bit difficult to explain to people, but it takes place in 2 different parts. The first part is the observation period. So this year it's April 29th through May 2nd. So this is a 4-day period to find and upload evidence of wildlife that you find in your homes, in your parks, schoolyards, and just your city in general. And you upload that evidence. So the evidence would be photos or sound recordings through the app iNaturalist. You can also do it on the website, and we'll talk about that more later. So there are 2 school days involved with the City Nature Challenge. So there's both that Friday, the 29th, and then May 2nd, which could be good opportunities to engage students. Next slide. The second part is the identification period. So that takes place May 3rd through May 8th. So we have all these super cool observations of nature, and the next step is to figure out what it is we're looking at. So during this time, everyone works together to identify the observations that were found during that 4-day period. And in Nebraska, we're going to host some identification parties May 4th through the 6th over lunchtime, about 12:30 to 1:30 over Zoom. And those will just be a fun opportunity to log in, and you will have some experts each day that can help if you have any questions. You're like, I don't know what this plant is. Can somebody help me? We'll have some people on that can help you identify what you find. So the City Nature Challenge is happening all across the globe, but it's also happening all across Nebraska. So in 2022, we have 5 participating cities. We have the Omaha metro area, we have the Norfolk, Madison County area, Lincoln, Lancaster County, North Platte, Lincoln County, and then Scottsbluff County. So it's really exciting. The City Nature Challenge in Nebraska started with the Omaha Zoo. And then a few years ago, Lincoln joined in, and now we've continued to grow. So one thing that's important to point out, if you upload observations onto iNaturalist and you are in one of these participating areas, you don't have to worry about like finding the project on the app and joining it. It's going to automatically upload for you to that city or county's project. So it's really easy. You don't have to worry about that. Next slide. However, if you're not in a participating city, but you want to still participate, there's an opportunity for that. So the global organizers created a City Nature Challenge global project that you can join and then your observations count no matter where you are. So that project allows people who aren't in a participating area to have their observations count as well, but you just have to join that project. Next slide. Okay, and this is just a big list of our partners across the state. This is a project that couldn't happen without everybody's support and involvement. I'm gonna go ahead and put a few links in the chat to some helpful websites and also a couple of those iNaturalist projects. One of the iNaturalist links I'll put in is for our Nebraska leaderboard, and that'll let you see the totals of all the cities participating, but also really easily find which city you want to maybe be involved with. So I just want to pause for a second and see if anybody has any questions at this time about anything I talked about. Okay, if not, we'll move on to Jack. It's back to you, right?
Yes, it is. So we're going to take a little bit of time to introduce the curriculum about that we'll explore today. So Project Learning Tree and Project WET. For those of you who may have joined us on our series before, this might be familiar to you, so we won't spend too much time on it. But Project Learning Tree is a comprehensive environmental education program that started in the 1970s, and it's the oldest of what we call the project style curriculum programs. In our state, in Nebraska, there's 3 major project curriculum programs that you might have heard of or might be familiar or trained in. Project WET and Project Learning Tree, which I coordinate at the Forest Service, and then Project Wild, which is more wildlife focused and is coordinated by Monica McCubry, one of Allie's colleagues over at Nebraska Game and Parks headquarters. But PLT is a program of SFI, which is a national and international organization that focuses on making sure forest products, so paper, wood, other products, are managed and harvested in a sustainable manner. So odds are that you might see that SFI logo in your office or where you're learning from here this afternoon. If you have a box of Kleenexes or a ream of printer paper, or maybe this weekend you're going to go do some home improvement. During the holiday season, if you have some time off and you get some lumber from the hardware store, you might see that SFI logo there too. So I always just like to point that out because they financially sponsor the national staff that help keep our program going. So PLT also works. There's multiple educator guides that range from preschool students with lessons targeting early childhood development all the way through high school level classes. So today we're going to do an adaptation of a lesson that comes from the K-8 educator guide. But you can easily adapt and tweak PLT and other lessons from the 3 EE projects to really any age group or audience. You can pull pieces and parts, either adapting a lesson down for a younger age group, giving them more educational supports or hand-holding as they complete a lesson, or scaffolding a lower level concept to be a little bit more difficult for those older students. Project WET is also a project that I coordinate, and we might mention it a little bit later on this afternoon, but the lesson we'll encounter comes from Project Learning Tree today. It's a little bit younger than PLT, but it started in the 1990s and is a private nonprofit foundation out of Bozeman, Montana. As you might hypothesize with their logo, it's focused on water education, and their mission is to advance water education to understand global challenges and inspire local solutions. So similar to PLT and Project Wild over at Game and Parks, there's multiple educator guides that range all the gamut of high school through early childhood. So where can you get the curriculum? I know it's a little deceiving, right? We're going to talk about a lesson and encounter a lesson, which you'll receive after attending today's workshop. But if you want the full curriculum guide, like you can see on my slide here, the best way is to interact and attend one of our workshops. So we have monthly virtual workshops, as well as a lot more great in-person hands-on opportunities popping up across the state. And we also are able to provide professional development to a private group. So if you're part of a early childhood provider collaborative group, for example, or maybe you want to bring us to your school as part of your professional development day, we can come and provide a training for you as well. So that's a little bit about the curriculum that we'll encounter today. And now we're going to dive into more of the fun of Schoolyard Safari, which is our activity for the afternoon. So I always like to begin some of these activities with guiding questions. So the first question I'm going to ask, and feel free to either unmute yourself or interact in the chat box if you are more comfortable in that, is what signs of nature do we typically find around us?
At this time of year, we have, new things coming up or to life, daffodils, the grass is getting green, buds on the trees, that kind of thing.
Yes, definitely. Hopefully you have some pretty flowers blooming where you are at. The leaves or the trees are starting to open up their buds and leaf out potentially. Depending upon where you are in the state, you might have some different birds visiting you. A little bit earlier this month or last month in the central part of the state, we had the crane migration flying through, and we still have some geese and some waterfowl that are migrating through as well. So there's lots of different signs of nature, right, that we can find around us, even in an urban setting, right? If you live in a city or in a town. Then our next question is, what makes up a habitat? Does anyone know the elements that we use to consider a habitat? And I see in the chat, we had a question about emailing things. And so after today's workshop, I'll email out all the links to everybody. So in case you miss a link or a link to a resource, you can see that after we wrap up today too. So it looks like we have some of the elements. We have food, right? Everybody needs to eat. Even as much as I, sometimes forget to do that myself. We all need to eat. We all need also to have some water. It looks like Diana added that in. Shelter. And then finally, what is the fourth and final element that we need for habitat? Especially thinking about animals, we need to move around. So what would we move around through? Or explore or interact with? There we go. Space. Yes. I always like to think of it like the final frontier, right, from the movie. But so we have food, water, shelter, and space. Those are the four basic elements of habitat. So in Schoolyard Safari, what we do with students is we're going to go on an outdoor exploration. And so if you have a sheet of paper that you might be taking notes on today, or just a sticky note that's near where you're learning from, feel free to make a little T chart on a piece of paper. And so that means you're going to draw a vertical line about halfway through your paper and then a horizontal line really high up. So it should look, let me get a piece of scratch paper myself here and make my own, just in case you've never done a T-chart before, but should look something like this. There we go. And then on one side of your paper, I want you to just write the word hypothesis, and on the other side, write observations. Does anyone know what the word hypothesis means? Or have a definition they want to share for that word? Yep. A lot of folks are sharing in the chat, educated guess. That's a really good colloquial term that we use to define hypothesis. It's basically what we expect or what we think we might see, right? So what do we think that we might see? And then on the other side, right, observations. And observations are just what we see in the world around us. We can have qualitative and quantitative observations. Does anyone know what the word qualitative means or what qualitative observations means? I'll put that in the chat too so everyone can see the word. It might be a little hard. Qualitative versus quantitative. Qualitative observations, oh, yep, quantitative are measurable. So we saw 5 cardinals, or it is 85 degrees outside, or it's a 15% humidity, right? We had 2 inches of rain last night. Anything that you can measure, and we can have, you know, those specific numerical representations of those observations. And that can come in a variety of forms, right? The other is things that maybe aren't so measurable, right? We might say the grass is green. The sky was really gray today. You know, sometimes those things we can quantify, but especially when we're working with students, especially younger students, we might not introduce the quantifiable aspects of all of those observations at an early age. Maybe the pine cone that we pick up is pokey, right? That's an observation we've made. And so that's what we would call a qualitative observation. So, and both types of observations are valid. It just depends on the type of work you're doing or the type of study and what we're trying to collect. Today, you can collect both types, both quantitative and qualitative observations. What we're going to do next is we're going to dive into a quick 5-minute breakout room. And I want you to fill up or start to, you know, jot down some notes on that first side of the T-chart, the side that says hypothesis. And in your room, just talk about what signs of nature you think are near you today. So what do you hypothesize you might find outside where you're learning from today? So I know we're joining us from all across Nebraska, so there might be some very different signs of nature around us, but feel free to jot down just a few of those on your sheet of what you think you might see outside near you today. Does anyone have any questions about those instructions before we go into our first breakout room? I don't see any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and start those breakout rooms. And then we will spend just about 5 minutes chatting about what you think you might, those hypotheses of what you might see. Okay, you should see a message on your screen that asks you to join your breakout room. If anyone needs any help joining the breakout rooms, let me know. Hello, everyone. As we gather back together, hopefully that got you a little bit more interaction and chatting amongst each other, either in the chat box or over your audio and video. As our breakout rooms come back into the main room, let's go ahead and does anyone want to share some of their hypotheses, so the plural of hypothesis, with the group here today? Let's see, room number 3, I'll pick on you first. Anyone from your room want to share kind of what you might have discussed together? So that was Allie, Ashley, Brenda, Connie, and Shelley.
I think Shelley wrote down some of our answers.
Yeah, I did. We said that we've seen a lot of the flowers coming up, like daffodils, and I said my lilacs were budding. They said insects, the grass is turning green. Someone said they saw dandelions. We saw buds. We saw a lot of different birds. They talked about seeing even a mosquito and some flying gnat-like flies. I said my lilacs have buds. I have small hostas and irises up. Did I miss anything? I was jotting down as fast as I could.
No, I think you did a great job. Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Let's have room number 1. Does anyone from that room want to share? Diane, Jennifer, Kay, Star, and Wendy, I believe.
I can share for our group. We had trees budding. We talked about how windy it was here today, and maybe there's sticks down in our yards. Animals like birds, squirrels, rabbits. There was sunshine. Grass is turning green. I know we are working on some new garden beds, so there's dirt in my yard. Daffodils blooming and coming up. So
there we go. Yes, those are all great hypotheses. So now what we're going to do is, I bet some of you can probably guess, is we're going to go ahead and make some observations. So when I say go, this is something we do in all of our conservation education workshops at the Forest Service. Even when we're online, we ask you to try and go outside. So if you can't go outside from where you're learning from today, that's a-okay. I understand that some of us, it might be harder than others, especially if we're watching the little ones after school. But try and then make some observations by looking out a window or where you can see the outdoors from where you're learning from. But if you can pop outside for a little bit, especially on a gorgeous afternoon like today. It gets you off your screen, gets you some sunshine. You know, I've had some folks go outside with 2 feet of snow on the ground, so I think we can manage it, the rest of us here this afternoon. But what we're gonna do is then fill out the other side of that chart. So just spend about 7 minutes searching outside for signs of nature, those signs of nature that we're observing. So first we were thinking about what do we think we're going to see? Now what do we observe, or what do we know that we've seen outdoors? So does anyone have any questions before we send us all outside? Okay, one thing I wanted to mention too is make sure you use all 5 of those senses if you can. You know, think about what do we see, what can we maybe touch that's observable, or that's an observation. What can we smell, the flowers, the air? What can we hear, like birds? Or what do we may not taste anything, but if you want to, you can, but I didn't tell you how to taste anything outside. So, well, with that, we'll spend 7 minutes outside. So by my clock, we'll come back together at 4:18. Also, feel free to use the bathroom or take a drink or something if you need to in the meantime as well. But let's fill out that other side of the chart with our observations. Okay, everyone, as we begin to come back together, hopefully you have were able to make a few observations near and where you are learning from today, and also that you have hopefully gotten a little bit of sunshine here this afternoon, right? A breath of fresh air. So schoolyard safari is the objectives of this is that students will identify signs of animals living in their schoolyard, and that they'll describe the ways which the environment provides habitat for animals living there. So the next part that we're going to do is we're going to take another handful of minutes and talk about those observations. So talk about in your groups as we come back together. I'll wait a couple more minutes in case there's any stragglers, but what signs of nature did we actually find? So what were those observations that we made? And then also talk about what elements of habitat you might have found, or what elements of habitat you observed, right? So maybe we observed that there's a tall tree out in front. So in front of my office, there's some shorter trees, actually, like a magnolia tree that's blooming right now. So how could that provide habitat? That provides habitat because animals could climb up in the tree, and also they're blooming, and so it's a great space for insects and pollinators to, get their food. So just discuss in your breakouts what you observed and how those relate to those elements of habitat that we discussed. So food, water, shelter, and space. There we go. Hopefully your breakout rooms have opened. Hi, everyone. Hopefully that got you talking in your rooms a lot about what signs of habitat you observed out in nature that's near you. Does anyone from, as the rooms trickle back together, want to share maybe some of their observations that they made today, or some of what you discussed as the group in the small group? It looks like room number 1 is still wrapping up, so we'll wait like a couple more seconds before we start to share. But here they come. So does anyone from room number 3, so that was Ashley, Jennifer, Kay, and Shelly, want to share maybe some of what they discussed in their breakout session? So what signs of habitat did they actually observe out in nature near them?
See, I was waiting for somebody else to go because I had to go last time, but I think I'm gonna be stuck again this time. But Kay had said she heard some cars and the wheel on her windmill squeaking, so that she saw her son with the stick playing. And Jennifer said she saw some puddles. And I'm trying to remember, and they heard cars. Help me out, guys.
Yeah, we said pine needles.
Pine needles and pine cones,
leaves,
yeah.
soil, rocks, birds chirping in the wind.
Yep. So
Great.
Oh,
Thanks for sharing some of those observations. Room number 1, so that's Wendy, Veronica, Star, Diane, Caitlin, and Allie. Would one of you want to share maybe some of the things that you discussed observing near you?
Yeah, so I can kick us off, but we talked about different like birds that are making nests. I noted that since I'm at the zoo, we have a lot of native animals who interact with the exotic exhibits that we have built, and so a lot of the water features that we have here, the geese use or different amphibians use. So we see a lot of those popping up right now, which is really interesting. And then anybody else in the group, you guys can chime in with what you guys observed.
Well, we just talked about how there's a lot going on out there right now. Competition and things blooming and, just a lot of interaction and things that we do for habitats to exist, like actually feeding our backyard birds or giving them water through the winter months. Things that are important, of course.
Yes, well, those are all great things. Thanks for sharing. Let me get my screen sharing set up again. Can everyone see my slides? Perfect. So I'm just going to share a few resources that go along with this activity. So again, since we're virtual today, it's always a little tough to do this in a virtual landscape, but here's one of the sheets from Project Learning Tree that goes with this lesson. I had you just make a T-chart, right, of what did we hypothesize seeing and what did we observe, right? And then the final step that we all did together is we actually shared our observations. So congratulations, you are all officially citizen scientists as of today, right? Because we made a hypothesis, we conducted an experiment, so we went outside and made observations, and then we reported or shared those observations or results with all of us. So we completed the entire scientific method in just under 15 minutes. So pat yourselves on the back. But in the full curriculum, of course, there's a little bit more depth to their worksheet, just because it's built a little bit more for around students ages grades 3 through 5. So talking a little bit more about habitat. What signs did you see? Or you can draw them. Where did you see animals? You know, sometimes we might do this activity and might actually see some wildlife outside our window. And then finally, what were the animals doing? So that behavior aspect. If you work a lot with early childhood, maybe it's a little bit hard for them to write down all their observations, right? But they could draw their observations instead. Something else that's available from PLT is that a couple other state programs made these really cute little bingo cards that go along with this activity that you can download and use. And I'll send these out also at the end of the workshop. But you can maybe print these off and then go on a little scavenger hunt, more or less, with your students as a class, or individually. Maybe you have like a neighborhood park or your backyard where you can kind of set the kids loose, per se, in a confined area, and they can go searching for all of these aspects in nature. So some different ways that you can use this same activity, just in a different style. But this, again, activity focuses on just getting kids out in nature and starting to make those observations about the world around them. So
can you send us a copy of that?
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Because I like that. That's kind of cool. And that would be something my kids would like.
Yeah. And there's another one too that this one's a little bit more fancy, but it's more Alaskan focused. So like this is a little North American porcupine right there eating the side of the tree. And we do have those in Nebraska, just not probably here in Lincoln or Omaha in our bigger metropolitan areas. So I can for sure send these out. But I always like to ask 3 important questions, and I think we're fine to just do this all together this afternoon. But what did you like about the activity? What maybe did you dislike, or what would you change about the activity? And then finally, how might you use this activity or adapt it to use in your learning environment? I know during these sessions, we have a lot of different folks joining us, from non-formal educators and nature centers and museums, all the way to after school educators and early childhood professionals, and then of course our K-12 classroom teachers. So we have a lot of different settings to use something like this in. So how might you use this in your work with students? So does anyone want to go ahead and share some of their thoughts about one of these questions? Maybe let's start with the first one. What did you like about this activity?
I think what I like the most about this activity is that it's easy to do. It does not require like a lot of preparation. Even if it's with children, you can just go outside where they have like recess and observe what's happening in their surroundings.
I think it'll get a lot of conversation started between the kids and the teachers.
I think we have some folks sharing in the chat too, that great way to think about the world. Yep, thinking about the world outside around them. What would you maybe adapt or change to use in your classroom or learning environment? One thing I can share that I've done with this activity before with students is that sometimes I use this, but I'll do this with clipboards, you know, when you have kids making notes outside, especially if we're more thinking of our like early elementary to middle school age ranges, that can be kind of hard for them if they don't have like a heavier duty paper, or printing something off like the bingo charts, but on like heavier cardstock, so they don't have to worry about like crumpling the paper or accidentally ripping the paper when they go outside if they're writing things down. I've also done this too, where you have maybe if you're working with really little learners, right, our preschooler ages and or first graders and kindergartners, and instead of doing individual observations, right, I just as the educator have a clipboard or maybe even a bigger poster sheet with me, and then I write down the observations that we see as we go on a little bit of a walk, right? And so instead of them making individualized observations, we kind of do the experience as a group. Because again, maybe they just, you know, don't know how to write yet, or you want to really focus on one thing. Like you could focus on just one of those 5 senses, right? What did we see? What did we hear? What did we smell? Or you could even segment that out on your little poster board as you're going through and writing things down. So anyone else have anything they wanted to share about how they might adapt or use this in your setting?
Yeah, Jack, I just wanted to say another way, kind of like what you were saying about the leader, kind of writing or recording the observations, is you could do the same thing, but use iNaturalist and record the observations as you go for the group. That could be a really good way to, you know, make that bridge to the community science aspect.
Yes, that's perfect. And that actually segues really well into our next segment, but did anyone else have any other final thoughts they wanted to share before we move on?
So when you record things in iNaturalist, like you have other people can see what the things that you're recording. I'm not too familiar with that app, but you can log what you're seeing and share it. That's the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we'll talk about next.
Okay.
Yes, so this is a great one to use iNaturalist with. Thanks for bringing that in to tie into our next segment. And we're going to actually teach you how to use iNaturalist in our little bit of our ending time together. But here are just a few other lessons, and I'll send this slide out to everybody too, or the whole slide deck after today's workshop too, because I know this is kind of a long list. But there's lots of different lessons from PLT and WET in our really big curriculum books. You know, we have our Explore Your Environment Guide and our Project WET Guide 2.0 that are our flagship curriculums. And as you can tell, there's a lot of lessons that you might find in these books. And there's lots of them that pair in really easily with the citizen science aspect of making observations about the world around you, and then trying to use those observations either to inform you know, what we're doing with the environment. So maybe some human actions that we can take to improve the environment, or also just understanding better how humans and nature are interacting in your location, which ties in really well with Earth Month, right? And our goal of trying to inspire that sense of stewardship and conservation in our students. So, well, just for the sake of time, dive into our next segment, where we're going to actually show and tell you how to use iNaturalist and participate in the City Nature Challenge. So I'll hand it over to Caitlin for talking us through this portion.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, so iNaturalist, as we have said, is a really great tool to use for citizen science, not only with City Nature Challenge, but you can use it all year round. Like Ali had talked about, it is a huge database where we can make observations of living things. So it can be the smallest bug that you can see, plants, animals, it can be any living thing. Fungi is a big one that we find on iNaturalist. And so you can go in and take observations. And so what you're seeing on the screen right now is our screenshots from Ali's app that she uses And the app is really easy to download. So it's available on Google Play, it's available on the App Store, completely free. All you need to do is just make a username and password. So it's usually connected to an email. That's pretty much the longest part of getting the app, is just making an account. Once you have an account, you're set up. And so if you see the middle portion, that's Allie's kind of profile, and you can see that there are a ton of different tabs on this section. And so projects is one that I'll touch on specifically with iNaturalist, because that's a project that you guys will be able to view. How to make an observation is probably the most important part of iNaturalist, right? And so you can see at the bottom it says new observation, and then you can also see on that left hand that there is a green plus sign, and so that's another way you can choose to make an observation. And then on the right hand side, you can see what pulls up after that. And so you can make an observation with a photo. You can also record a sound and upload with a sound. We do this a lot with amphibians because we will record amphibian sounds, and you can upload that. And so you upload whichever media type that you would like. And then once you upload, and I think you can go to the next slide, Jack.
There we go.
There you go. Yeah, so once you upload, you'll see the details of your observation. And so when it says, what did you see? And you see view suggestions. So the beauty of iNaturalist is that it will actually look at the picture or listen to the sound that you uploaded, and it'll suggest species that it could be, which is really great, even just for your own use and not in the education world of what is this bug? What is this animal? I would love to know suggestions for it. And so you can upload those, view the suggestions. You can pick a suggestion, and then what'll happen after is you confirm where you saw it. Usually they do this if you make location services available for the app, which I really do suggest doing, because that is what the app is based off of. It can pinpoint where you saw those observations and where you made them. Once you make that observation, people can then go in and see your observations. If you're part of a project, and I'll touch a little bit more on it with City Nature Challenge, but people can go and suggest, say this, was a prairie rose. People can go and confirm this is a prairie rose. And if you get X amount of people identifying it, then it becomes a verified research grade observation. So that means, enough people confirmed that it was this species that it's now research grade, which is great to have research grade observations. And so also, if you guys have questions, please either jump in, unmute yourself, put it in the chat, because I know it looks a little bit complicated, but it's actually really simple to do. You can also upload pictures that you already have, and if you know where it was, you can upload that location. That's really helpful if you are, say, a classroom teacher and the age group of your kids, they're not making accounts for iNaturalist. You can have one account. If the students have computers, or if you want to do it on one, you can take the pictures and upload later. That way the kids are involved without, having to make these email or accounts per kid. You can do it on one account and take those pictures. And I'm gonna start screen sharing my screen, if that's okay, Jack.
Perfect.
All right. So can everybody see the screen? Cool. Okay, so what you're looking at is one of our projects. And so this is our Omaha Zoo iNaturalist. And so you can see this is our profile. We have different observations that are made in the Omaha area. So we track those. You can see on our profile, I can go down to projects, and that's where we have all of the projects that we've done. And so I'm going to click on our City Nature Challenge 2022. And so this is this year's project. And so members can join. So you can join projects and they will live on your profile. So you can go back and add to those projects if they're not auto generated. these ones are, so you can see countdown until City Nature Challenge, the project requirements. So if you're looking at a project and you want to know what those requirements are, some of them have location restrictions. And so for this one in Omaha Metro, we have that location restriction. And then for City Nature Challenge, all of those other cities have their location restrictions. And like Ali said, if you're not in those location restrictions, you can be a part of that global project, which is really great. Some projects have date requirements, and so we do for those 4 days for this BioBlitz. Some projects are ongoing, which is really nice. You can upload them whenever, which is great for bird watching and different projects, citizen science projects like that.
Really quick, Caitlin, if
yeah.
you are maybe a more secondary education or middle school, is there a way that folks can create their own projects? Like if you were going to do a BioBlitz as a class, would you want to show that to folks? Or just where they would click that?
Yep. So creating projects is really easy, and you would come to all your projects, and then. Sorry, I had to scroll down a little. It would be start project. And all you would have to do is either a collection project or an umbrella projects. And so generally for those type of situations, you'll do collection projects. And that way you can have people, and once you get started with that, you will choose all of your parameters. And I think I can actually go, yep, there we go. So here are the parameters that you would choose. You could do project name. So if you guys are just doing like a BioBlitz within your school, you could name it something specific and then share that project name with those who you want in the project, and then they can join it. You can choose an icon if you want, banners, that's all different stuff. Project summary, you can explain the rules of what you want, if you want, you know, only X species or what your project summary is. Like I said, collection is going to be generally for those types of projects, what you'll do. Umbrella tracks multiple projects. And so with the City Nature Challenge, there's a full global umbrella project. And this is their umbrella project. And so you can see when we scroll down, all of these projects from all the cities are involved, and you can scroll out and see how many projects across, that's just United States, but across the whole globe are happening. And so that's what an umbrella project would look like. Collection project is just that like local, what we have for our City Nature Challenge. That's what a collection project looks like.
Yeah.
So you can do taxa. So you can choose something specific if you guys are just wanting to look for one type of thing. So if we're just doing monarchs or just doing birds, you can only have that be what the observations come up as. Places, you can restrict it. So we have ours for just city, just the Omaha Metro. And then you can include users if you have specific users that you want involved.
Yeah, thanks for showing that, Caitlin. I know sometimes working with schools and things, they like, if you're, privileged enough to be in a setting where you have one-to-one on technology, or you might be able to like check out technology, it's a great way to have your students do something like this, and then they can all look at each other's data without having to like sift through everybody else in Omaha, but yeah, sorry, but thanks for showing that.
Yeah. No, and that's the beauty of community and citizen science, is that data is accessible to everybody. And so we're able to see those trends, and anybody is able to see those trends. And so your students are able to see what kind of impact they're having just by taking a picture of an animal, which is really great and pretty encouraging too, for as far as conservation impact goes. So I'll go back to our projects here. So I'll show you what our project for 2020 looked like. So a completed City Nature Challenge for Omaha. So it tracks all the members, it tracks observations. And so we can go in and see which observations happened and go through all the pictures. So you can see it marks who did it, when they did it, and then you can actually go in and see all these. And then I want to go down here. So you can see there's a ton of observations. I think we had like 1,900 that year. Since 2020, everybody was trying to get outside and do something. We had 522 species identified, and we had 342 people actually identifying. So those types of numbers are really great too, to see who in your community is participating in these types of projects. It is encouraging to see so many people participating. So if we go to the overview, what's cool about the location services, I was kind of talking about before, but you can see these pinpointed observations. So this is our Omaha metro area that we have blocked off. You can go in and actually see where these observations were made. So if you see a really cool animal or bird or insect and you want to know, where they saw it, they might have saw it at a state park that you can then go and hike. They might have seen it in somewhere that's in your neighborhood, and then you can tell your students, oh, this was seen here. Go outside and look at your backyard. Maybe you'll see this animal. Tell us if you do. And so it's really cool to have those location services to know where these animals were actually seen.
I have a question for you. I just downloaded all this as you're talking because I'm trying to follow along and making sure. Very computer illiterate, I'm into it. So as long as you were here, I could do it. So like it asked the phone asked if I wanted to use my location, and I said yes. Okay. So like if I'm traveling, does it pick up on that?
Yes.
If I take a picture, and will it pick up on the fact that I'm no longer in Lincoln? I happen to be in Chadron, and will it pick that up and understand that?
Yep. Yeah, it'll pick that up and it'll note your observation wherever you are. And if there's a project that is capturing like all observations made in that area, your observation can go to that project. Yeah. Any other questions too? I know there, it's a lot and I'm kind of a fast talker as it is.
I had a question about, we were part of the project in 2020 where it was specifically about birds. And I don't remember, it was in the springtime, but it was more, I don't know if it was counting birds or identifying them. But when I look at those pictures, like my phone does not take that good of pictures of birds. And when I uploaded them to iNaturalist 2 years ago, I remember like the feedback that people would give me, on what they thought it was, I would say what I thought it was, and then other people would respond, and it was just really hard. Like I couldn't get it big enough. It's not like a plant where you can get down close and get a really good picture of it. I had a real hard time with that. I don't know if you have any suggestions or how to get decent photos that seem to be closer than what I was able to do.
Yeah, and that is a hard part. I find that a lot with frogs too. When I take pictures of amphibians, half the time they're blended right into the mud, and I'm like, I don't think people can even see what I'm talking about. But that's why it's cool that they do sounds, and I'm pretty sure you can, and Allie, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure you can upload videos too. I want to say you can. And so that's another way. If you can get a picture and a sound recording, that helps people. It's not always going to be perfect though. I'm trying to see if there's a good one.
So I'm not sure you can do the videos, but you can definitely do the sound.
Okay. Hopefully they make that available too, because similar technology. Yeah, so even if it's blurry, I mean, it's an observation, and who knows, the beauty is so many people are participating, so somebody might actually know what you're talking about because they've also taken the same blurry picture, which is great about community science. You never know who's taken pretty much the exact same photo as you, and it's like, oh yeah, I figured it out. So yeah, you can see some of them, or I mean,
like birds are really hard, but also when you're uploading, you can add a description of the species. So if you add some of those details about what you saw, that can help verify what, that you saw what you saw. Sort of
okay,
thing.
thank you.
One thing to note is that you can always then talk about with your students too, like what does it mean that we need to take, or what style of picture do we need to take to have that be usable data. And also it's a conversation starter about not every science experiment that scientists do in the real world or behavior study on animals in the wild gives us results that we can use, right? Sometimes you go out and you try something and sure, yeah, you saw a critter out there, but you may not know what it is, or you may not have gotten the results that you needed to be measurable, right? So I just like to use that too as a conversation starter, just talking about that, the data and the observations too, right? Not every observation we make always has to be usable, and that's okay. So
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, Jack. Data and animal behavior and studying animals is not successful a lot of the times. And I find that as a barrier with students and younger kids of it takes a lot more time than they're willing to give or have the capacity to give, which is okay. And so Jack, that's a great point of like using that as a learning tool of, yeah, we might not be able to get it maybe another day, or like Ali said, using descriptor words for those animals, which also helps with students being able to identify certain groups of animals or species, and using that as a tool for, okay, if we only see part of the wing of a bird, well, what bird could it be? Does it, does it have a big wing? Does it have a small wing? And try to narrow it down that way. I think that's a really good, beginner lesson for taxonomy and stuff like that. So yeah, really great. What are we, like a couple minutes? Does anybody have any more questions?
Caitlin, I just wanted to make sure you hit on captive cultivated.
Yes, which is one of the main parts of our city specifically, because we at the zoo for City Nature Challenge, we do have people here doing observations because we have both wild and cultivated animals. And so when you make an observation, I don't know if we have one here that was cultivated. Shoot, I don't know if we have one that was cultivated, but when you make your observation, and I might just have to make one. Oops, sorry, there are people running around here. Shoot, I think. Do you know if in one of your, there was, okay, there it is. Okay, can everybody see this slide again?
Yep.
Okay, so right here in the bottom of this right-handed slide, there's, is it captive or cultivated? So if you yourself like planted a plant, or if you're at the zoo and you take a picture of a tiger in the middle of Omaha, obviously we don't have tigers here, and those plants might not be native to the area, and so you just check if it's captive or cultivated. You can still make that observation, but it notes that that it is not native to the area, or it's been, planted yourself, or it's part of an exhibit. Even if it is native to the area, and you see, an elk in a national park, or or an elk in what we have, like a large pen, or a raptor that's in recovery, you still have to mark that as cultivated, because it's not a wild observation that you are making.
Thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, they both count. It's just a good piece of data for us to have on the other side of knowing what things were maybe planted versus growing wild or native. And same with the animals. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking about how I could expand this at the childcare. And so, sorry. One of the things I noticed as I'm playing on here is that there is a lot of, if you hit projects nearby, there's a lot of places that have their own projects going on. And I was thinking, oh, how much fun it would be to teach all my daycare parents how to use this and encourage them to capture things with their kids when they go on walks. And so how could I set up a Aunt Shelley's daycare project so that the kids could do that? How can we set up our own project? Did you go through that?
Yeah, no, so you can do that on your own profile. And so where's my tab here?
Trying to
That's
figure
a
out
fun idea.
Yeah,
so for that kind of project, you would want the parameter to include who joined the project, instead of it just being like an open source data pool. Does that make sense? That way you
Yeah.
have those specific people instead of like all observations in the whole.
Right, and that's what
Mhm.
I'm thinking too, and I thought how much fun it would be to make just a project for the daycare and encourage parents to go out a certain week with their kids for walks and take pictures with their phone and get that started. Because then you're teaching families to be together, one, which doesn't always happen, we all know that, as childcare providers. And two, you're giving them an opportunity to add to what the daycare does. So the next day we can look and see what's on our observations, and they actually can pull it up and we can all talk about it. And somebody could, I'm sure somebody will go, my dad got one last night. And I'll go, he did, but we better make sure we look, you know? And that's what I'm thinking, how fun that would be to expand that. So there you go.
Yeah, so you would just go onto your profile, click on your projects, and you'll have a button that just says start a project. And then you can go ahead and go into those parameters and
Okay,
choose.
because I'm there and I can't find it. So I'm gonna hold on.
Yeah, so you have to have a certain number of observations before you're allowed to start projects. Do you remember what that number is, Caitlin?
I think it's 10.
I need to
10.
get busy and start marking.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
just
you
wanna
gotta
make
go
sure you know
outside.
how to use it before you, start a project.
See how
Yeah.
you are?
So go outside, take 10 pictures, make the observations, and then you can start your project.
I had this super cool idea. I was all excited about it. And then because I was thinking we could go to Wilderness Park and we could add to it. All kinds of fun things. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a really great tool. And even for like upper level education, it's a good extra credit tool too, or homework that they can just go out and do at night. It's really great.
Well, I'm looking at 2 to 5 right now. And then when school's out, I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. But I'm still thinking, what a great family project thing to set up it would be. I just think that would be so cool.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
Well-
You would set up a project, and then other people would join, like you would add people to that project so that you wouldn't have a bunch of different people using it, or you would encourage them to sign up for their own accounts, not if they're very young.
So if they are able to sign up for their own account, they would make that account, and then on the project, I'm just gonna go to this one. So on the project, you see the members, they would join there, and you would make sure that only members could make those observations.
And so if you were running a daycare with small children, you'd just get their parents to sign up as members, and then they did their observation, and you would add the parents as members.
Yes.
There we go. Well, I know we're just a couple minutes past the hour, so I want to share a couple more resources before we, split part ways this afternoon. But if anyone has any other questions, I'm happy to hang out a little while longer too and answer those. And I'm sure Allie and Caitlin will too. But we, of course, at NFS have a bunch of education resources you can use to help integrate more EE into your setting, especially thinking that this month is Earth Month, so Earth Day and Arbor Day and all the days that are coming up. And I'm sure the zoo and Game and Parks have great resources as well. So we do field trips and classroom visits, our professional development opportunities like the workshop you're experiencing tonight, as well as in-person opportunities. We have some new PLT educator tree trunks that I'll talk about in the next slide. And then we have a monthly newsletter that I'll send you a link for as well in the follow-up email with other resources. So our tree trunk program, so maybe you haven't attended a workshop and gotten a full project learning tree guide before, you can check out a copy of the curriculum and extra materials that go along with it from our partners across the state. So you can just scan this URL on your phone this afternoon, or of course in the slides, you'll have the link as well, and contact our regional partners. So we have 7 partners right now hosting sets of trunks that are focused on both the K-8 curriculum that had the schoolyard safari activity we discussed earlier, as well as a early childhood curriculum. So if you're a child care provider, all across the state. So that's a great opportunity to get in touch with get your hands on a curriculum book as well. So thanks for joining us this afternoon, and a huge thank you to our partners at Game and Parks and Omaha Zoo for joining us. Allie and Caitlin, it was great to have you join us this afternoon. Oh, did my screen not share? It did not share, of course. That's okay. I'm going to send a copy of the slides anyways. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to hang out a little while longer and then watch your emails for the follow-up resources and your evaluation links. If you fill out the evaluation, you'll get your copy of a certificate sometime next week via email. But if you don't fill out the evaluation, you won't receive your certificate. So, but if you have any questions, I'm sure that we're able to hang out for a few minutes longer and troubleshoot any tech issues or things like that too. But thanks for joining us, and hope you can make it next month for our next Teach Outside online workshop. So
I'm hanging out, Caitlin, because I want to ask a huge favor. Could I get your email address or a contact in case I get stuck trying, or even Allie, trying to get this set up, because I'm excited. I got mine set up, that then I got to deal with parents and trying to get them involved. And because we're going to do this, I'm planning on like a June or July activity, and when it's the midst of summer and getting them out where it's nice enough people can go out. Thank you. I'm going to take a picture of it, but that way then if it doesn't work out and I'm stuck, I have somebody to call and say, or email and say, hey.
Yeah, definitely reach out. We're happy to help.
Absolutely.
And I'm not, and Jack will vouch, I'm not shy about asking questions.
Shelly, I'm here in Lincoln, so if you ever want help or want to have like a workshop on iNaturalist at your center for your parents, let me know.
I wish I was a center. I'm a family childcare.
Oh, you're okay.
And I wish I was a center, but we're a Nature Explorer classroom.
So cute.
And I have been certified since 2017. And
Nice.
yeah, so we do a lot of outside activities, and my parents are very good about participating. I don't know how else to say that, but we're also a Wonder School, and Wonder School is all online on an app. And so trying to get parents to do that was quite a task. So I'm just kind of going, okay, let's see how we're going to get, if I'm going to end up having people go, I can't get the app to work. Can you tell me how to do it? And I'm going to go, no, because I do it too. So if that makes sense. So